Yo, what is up guys, it's Master2010 here, and today we have Avatar, the Science of Waterbending film theory. Now, I love Avatar, the Last Airbender. That was my favourite show when I was a kid, and I still like it now. So if you ruin this for me, I will kill you. I'm serious, I will lose my mind if you ruin Avatar for me, because I always take things as realistic as I can, and that's how I view things. But so if you ruin this for me, I will not be happy. So you ready? Oh, let's just do this and pray he doesn't ruin it for me.
You know, I am totally on board with the lore of Avatar The Last Airbender. They do a great job of building a world that feels real and believable. Characters that you really care about because they're well-rounded and likable. But really? Really? You're telling me I'm supposed to buy into this? Into a six-legged flying bison beaver bear that just flies around in the least aerodynamic way possible, weighs like 3,000 pounds and can still somehow manage to outmaneuver flaming cannons, firebolts, and lightning? Well, yeah, actually, believe it or not, it's entirely possible. Using evidence from how things work on the show, practically everything we see done in the bending world is feasible using basic real-world scientific principles. Meaning that the Avatar isn't just some mythic master of the martial arts, he's also got himself one heck of a killer science fair project.
Good. Okay, like that. It's TV theory, but yeah, sure, cartoon theory or whatever.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that proves there's no age limit on a Saturday morning cartoon addiction. So, first off, can I talk a little bit more about Appa from the cold open? Sure, everyone's favorite sky bison might seem like one of the most unrealistic elements of Avatar The Last Airbender, but his powers of flight are indeed possible. And I prove it in a series I did in partnership with Nickelodeon. Yeah, the Nickelodeon. You know, the people who produced the show in the first place. The show's called Factor Niction, and it's basically film theory with a bit more science, some live-action experiments going on, and a focus on classic Nick shows like Hey Arnold, Avatar, Rugrats, and Drake and Josh. You remember about a month ago when I did the Goo Lagoon episode of SpongeBob and I gave you a preview of what the show was going to be about, and you all pinky swore to me that even though I was spoiling some of its secrets that you'd still go and watch the episodes when I told you so that Nickelodeon would be really impressed with me and all of us theorists and how passionate we are as a community? Well, now is when I need you the most. Now is when I need you to go, click the top line of the description, and binge watch the first 3 episodes of Factor Niction. One on SpongeBob, one on Hey Arnold, and one on Avatar and Airbending and the realities of Appa's flight. It's available on Facebook right now, but don't worry, you don't need a Facebook account to watch. That said, if you do happen to have a Facebook account, please do me a favor and leave a comment saying how excited you are to see me working with Nickelodeon, okay? It's like a dream come true getting to do something with them, and I would love to do more, but in order to do that, I need to prove that people liked watching the show in the first place. So thank you so much in advance for doing that for me. It helps more than you could possibly know. But now, onward with a different but very related episode, Waterbending. To me, Avatar The Last Airbender is one of the most exciting fictional worlds ever created. A world with 4 major tribes: the Air Nomads, the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation, and the Water Tribes. Within each group are individuals with the power to manipulate the given element: air, earth, fire, or water. These are our benders, with bending being 1 part ancient martial art and 1 part naturally given skill. However, across time, there will always be 1 person who can master all 4 of the elements. That person is the Avatar. Basically the embodiment of a great spirit of light who's tasked with keeping all the elements in balance. When the show starts, we meet Aang, a 12-year-old or 112-year-old airbender who's just been named as the next Avatar. He's told that the Fire Nation with all its firebenders have started barbecuing the other groups, and now he only has a few mere months to master all 4 elements to save the world. No pressure there, right? When I was 12 years old, the biggest thing I had to worry about was my complexion. Whew, boy, I was a pimply pat. For years, I've wanted to talk about the science behind some of these abilities, and with the recent announcement of the Netflix Avatar remake,
definitely gonna react to that bullshit.
Excuse. Because the great thing about this show is its logic. Sure, lots of what we see on screen is magical, but it's magic that makes sense. Highly advanced waterbenders can manipulate the human body because, you know, the human body has a lot of water in it. Advanced earthbenders can bend and warp metal because of the mineral deposits hidden deep within the ore. But not only does the progression of abilities featured in the show make logical sense, but they also make scientific sense. When you stop and look at what exactly benders can and also can't do with their respective elements, the magic of it all really just boils down to each bending type mastering control over 1 key scientific principle. So with 4 types of bending I can theorize about, we have between now and when this new show comes out to make it through all the science of these cool abilities. So today I'm tackling what is literally the coolest bending style of them all, waterbending. And by coolest I mean temperature-wise, because we're dealing with ice and tribes that are located at the Arctic poles. I'm not trying to pass any judgment here on specific types of bending.
I think
we know
my
that
favorite.
earthbenders are objectively the best. So the question today, how can you waterbend like Katara simply by using real-world science? Yep. Let's get started. Now first, as we get started on this epic multi-episode journey, let me lampshade a little bit. Obviously, I'm not claiming that the powers we see in Avatar: The Last Airbender are real, or can be directly replicated via science. The show clearly conveys bending as an art form, not a science, and elemental manipulation is done through mastery of the different martial arts. So in that way, I'm not trying to explain away anyone's powers. I instead want to look at the reality of making water behave like it does on the show, based on the rules that we see on the show, and then talk about the science that would theoretically make it happen. What forces could make water move around like that, or change to ice, or generate a spontaneous tidal wave? You could say this is all just a theory, but why would you? It's a silly catchphrase. To its credit, the show provides a lot of information about elemental bending, and water gets some of the most solid evidence. For instance, the show establishes early on that celestial forces have a huge impact on bending ability, especially when it comes to water and firebenders. We learn early in the series that firebenders have been able to overpower all the other nations because they siphoned power off of Sozin's Comet, a fiery comet that passed by Earth and bestowed its flaming energy to the Fire Nation. Our hero Aang is forced to train as quickly as possible to acquire his avatar abilities because Sozin's Comet is on its return trip, giving the Fire Nation so much power that not even the Avatar will be able to stop them. Similarly, for the Water Tribe, we learned that their powers are strongest during a full moon.
The Waterbenders draw their power from the moon, and it is nearly full tonight.
With Katara specifically noting that waterbender powers are strongest at night.
I've always noticed my waterbending is stronger at night.
We also learn that eclipses have the opposite effect on benders. Firebenders and waterbenders both completely lose their abilities when the sun or moon are respectively eclipsed. Just this information alone gives us key intel about the underlying science behind bending. For firebenders, it would seem like solar radiation is playing a key role in their powers, since they lose those powers when it's blocked. But again, that's a theory for another day. For waterbenders, a lunar eclipse is going to block their powers entirely. Now, the moon doesn't emit any sort of solar radiation per se, but it does exert another major force on Earth, gravity. Gravity from the moon is, in fact, what makes all water on Earth bend in the first place, in the form of ocean tides and currents, all caused by water sloshing around on the face of the Earth. It's pulled, literally bent outward by the gravity of the moon on one side, and then sloshes back on the far side of the Earth, effectively creating these bulges on either side of the world where the high tides are, while the water in the middle is being sucked out, creating low tides. And the show absolutely knows that this connection exists, and it does a really good job of reflecting it as a basic property of waterbending. From the earliest episodes, Aang and Katara practice push and pull bending, creating tides. It's literally the first waterbending move that Aang learns, mimicking the moon's tides to create waves. And they use this basic skill a lot, to wash people out to sea or unbeach boats that they need to commandeer, all starting with the fundamental idea that tides are controlled by the gravity of the moon. So that's cool and all, but I hear you asking, what about this? Or this? Or this?
Yeah,
well, as good of a start as gravity is, we know that things are going to start to get a bit more complicated as we dip our toes into advanced water bending. From the water whip, the water shield, ice bullet, and good old puddle to the face. This level of precision makes our gravity explanation feel a bit laughable.
I laugh at gravity all the time. Gravity.
So scientifically, there has to be something else layered on here that's going to allow benders to control water more directly. The good news for all us aspiring avatars is that it's theoretically possible to bend water, not with Tai Chi or hand-waving or various stances, but with the powers of electromagnetism. Now, most of us are generally aware that water is electrically conductive, but not necessarily for the reasons that we expect. It's not the water itself that's electrically conductive, it's actually the salts that exist within the water. Regardless though, it's the reason that you don't go swimming in a lightning storm, or do your hair in a bathtub. It's because the salts within the water are super conductive. And lightning, or electricity flowing from your wall socket, loves to run through it, and as a result will also run through you if you happen to be swimming in it. But electrically charging that water isn't going to do anything to make it move. move, just makes it more dangerous. That's why bending also requires the magnet part of electromagnetism. If someone were to ask you if water is magnetic, most of us would say no, right? Doesn't contain any sort of iron or metal, doesn't really seem to do anything when I wave my magnet at it, but that's not entirely correct. The truth is that water is actually diamagnetic, meaning that any magnetic field, whether positively or negatively charged, is actually gonna repel water. So if you put a magnet near some water, you'll see the water is being very slightly bent by the magnet, pushed away from the magnetic field. Now, in this experiment, we have two syringes that are filled with equal amounts of water set to a string that'll allow them to freely rotate, right? So if we present one of the sides with a magnetic field, what we should see is the water start to bend away from those magnets. In turn, the syringes will start to spin away from that magnetic field. This is because of the diamagnetic properties of water. Where water isn't magnetic, it actually rejects magnetism and thus wants to move away from it. And that's exactly what we see happening right here, right? Where the syringes were level to the camera at a certain point, now you start to see them moving slowly away, rotating away from the magnetic field that I'm holding them to on this one side. And now if we present it in the opposite direction, you can see that now the syringes are moving the opposite way. This is to prove that it is indeed the magnetic field that's causing this rotation and nothing else. This is quite literally water bending at a microscopic level, where the magnetic fields are pushing the atoms of the water away in the syringe. So theoretically speaking, a waterbender could do the exact same thing. By creating electromagnetic fields that are strong enough, they can actually push the water away from themselves, creating all the really cool, awesome moves that they see them do in the show. Science and magic and bending. Now, if you're a physicist, this explanation is going to be pretty simplistic. But for our purposes, it actually explains a lot of things that we see play out in the series. Waterbenders rarely touch the water as they're bending it, which makes sense because the water is always being repelled from them. And the intricate curves and shapes that you see them making are coming from the electrical field that's applied to the water. Water molecules generally have a small negative electric charge. So by creating small electrical fields that are also negative, because like charges repel each other, waterbenders could theoretically redirect the flow of the water midstream, creating swirls, spears, bubbles, whatever they wanted, which is exactly what we see them creating with more and more precision over the course of the show. Early waterbending moves focus on establishing an electromagnetic field for simple shapes, but once the bender learns to control the fields with greater precision, it's only a matter of time before they're water spearing it up with the best of them. We also know that we're specifically dealing with electromagnetism and not simply magnetism from an unlikely source, the Fire Nation. Just like water and firebenders are related by their reliance on objects in outer space, they're also linked by their manipulation of electricity and charged particles. In the Season 1 episode The Storm, we see our first instance of lightning redirection, as Uncle Iroh saves Zuko's boat from an electrical strike. We find out later that he learned this ability by studying waterbending philosophy, i.e. studying electromagnetic fields that could be created in the air to repel charged lightning particles and bend them away from their target.
The technique I am about to teach you is one I learned by studying the waterbenders.
I mean, he says it's kind of like a Tai Chi-esque philosophy, but we all know the truth. We go on to see lots of other firebenders use this technique to either redirect or create lightning from their hands, but it's all based on the principle of generating an electrical current and directing it through the air. In theory, in film theory, this same principle actually explains some of the wackier and more macabre aspects of waterbending too, including vine bending, which we see in the Foggy Swamp Tribe, human bending, and water purification. Plants and people are made of a huge amount of water, all of which can be manipulated using electromagnetic fields. Create a strong enough field and you can bend a vine by bending all the water inside of it. By the same token, you can bend a person if all the water in their organs and bloodstream are being pulled in one direction. We see a select few waterbenders even cause people to lose consciousness using waterbending, presumably by preventing water, what's carrying all the blood, from getting to the brain. When it comes to other obscure waterbending techniques like purifying water, we know that although water is polar, a lot of its contaminants aren't. Oils and dirts are all made of carbon, meaning they won't do much of anything in an electromagnetic field. So waterbenders are able to pull the water away from the impurities, depolluting it and making it drinkable. So electromagnetic manipulation explains a lot of waterbending techniques, but it still leaves us with one big missing piece that I can't just make melt away: phase shifts. The most advanced waterbending techniques involve significant phase shifting between water's states of matter, particularly liquid and solid, ice to water and vice versa. The ice sled, the ice ramp, daggers, drills, even mist stepping, which involves stepping on tiny little ice rods. They are all valid techniques of waterbenders, not purely explained by electromagnetic fields. Or are they? The techniques that we've covered involve manipulating the motion of large groups of water molecules, puddles, lakes, ocean waves. But what if we wanted to manipulate motion on a smaller scale? In chemistry and physics, you learn about thermodynamics, and you find out that on the molecular scale, the idea of temperature is really a measure of motion. Molecules are moving fast? Well, we perceive that as hot. That bowl of soup you got there is no different chemically whether it's hot or cold. It's just that the molecules in your hot soup are moving a lot, and in your cold soup, they're just kinda sluggish. The same goes with ice and water. Liquid water molecules move and flow and wiggle and have a good old water molecule time, but ice molecules are locked together in a crystal lattice structure, just like you see in snowflakes. There's still a tiny bit of movement there, like they can kinda wiggle around in their framework, but the motion is much less than in a liquid or gas phase. We know that advanced waterbenders have the ability to turn water from liquid to ice, so what are they really doing in those instances? Well, at a super small scale, they're manipulating water molecules to slow their individual movement, or in physics terms, their kinetic energy. As they lose movement, they lose energy, becoming colder. If the bender is able to slow down the individual molecules enough, they'll start to lock together into that crystal structure we call ice. The key is the use of those same electromagnetic fields to slow the movement of individual molecules, to lock them in place. So there you have it. If we want to be waterbenders, all that's really standing in our way is the ability to create concentrated magnetic fields at will by waving our arms around, and then having that ability tied to an overwhelming reliance on the gravitational forces generated by the moon. No sweat, right? Maybe one of the other bending abilities will be a little easier for us to master. I mean, even Avatar Roku said that waterbending was especially challenging for him.
Waterbending was especially challenging for me.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory.
TV theory.
And like I said, if you want more Avatar science right now and you still haven't done it, please go and check out my episode of Factor Niction on Appa's airbending flight. And then go watch the one on SpongeBob's underwater campfires. You can have fire underwater. In fact, I show it in the episode. And then finally round it off with a discussion of Hey Arnold's Pigeon Man. All three of those episodes are available right now, with more on the way every Tuesday for the next couple of weeks. Link is down below. And like I said, you watching that series really helps me out. And heck, they might want to do more with me, which would be really cool. Working alongside the people who created my childhood is really awesome. So thank you for your support there. Link is where the arrows are pointing, down below in the description. And speaking of more episodes, make sure that you ring the bell to subscribe to Film Theory, because you can bet that I'll be talking about more bending soon. The science behind earth bending in particular is very, very cool. And again, totally rooted in real life science. Get it? Rooted? So if you want to see that episode, make sure you hit that subscribe.
He didn't ruin it. He did not ruin it. I am happy. And that was cool. For the record, the best bending is air. By far. So cool to have an airbender. Okay. I am so happy he did not ruin Avatar for me. I love that show so much. I still do. I still love it. Oh, I mean, I even like the movie a little bit. Okay, that's a lie. I don't like the movie, but I think the CGI is pretty cool. Okay. What? Anything else? No. But that was pretty cool. I'll leave a link to Film Theory in the description down below. If you want me to play anything or react to anything, put in the comments down below. Please like, subscribe, and see ya.